everyone. I hope you've had a really good Christmas and New Year's. It's been a little while since I've made a video. So what I thought I might do today is do something that I've seen one of the other YouTubers do. I just found it really interesting. I really loved it. So I wanted to do that too. And I thought because it's beginner friendly that you guys can do it along with me. So I've been following a YouTube channel called She Sews Seams, and it's hosted by Chelsea. And Chelsea is just lovely, and I really think you all should get amongst the She Sews Seams crowd. Um, she does a lot of really easy, beginner friendly tutorials, and she also does really cost effective tutorials and projects. So this is what I'm going to do, so that I saw her do. So I'm really excited to do that with you. So in America, which is where Chelsea is from, they've got a store called Dollar Tree. So I think that Dollar Tree is probably similar to our Reject Shop or any of our, $2 shops that we've got, like Dollar Store and Hot Dollar and Variety and all of those sorts of things. So she's gone in there and bought some equipment that, was available to her. So I've gone and got similar stuff here. So what we're going to do today is we're going to make a zippered pouch with a water resistant lining. And you can use this for makeup, cosmetics, or what Chelsea suggested was you can put your swimwear inside it. So if you've been to the beach or the pool, if you're in Australia at the moment, it is hot. So you're probably swimming, I hope you are, or you've found a body of water somewhere and are submerged in it right now, because I am in Western Sydney and I am dying, like dying. You might be able to hear my fan going in the background. I'm sorry, I can't turn it off. I cannot. So I know some of you understand that. Anyway, let's talk about what we've got. So we have a dish drying mat. Okay, I went to my local dollar store, which is just in my local supermarket. It's not the Reject Shop, it's just one of your standard bargain stores. So I picked up this one for $3.50. So they're probably around the same price. They're not expensive. So $3.50 for that. The lining, I'm going to use a tablecloth. So this is just the tablecloth from the party section in the same shop. I think it was about $2.50, maybe $2. I'm not sure. But you get a decent size rectangle tablecloth for $2.50. So thinking of cost effective things that you can use as a lining, this is a really good way of doing it. I know you can purchase stuff from Spotlight and various places, maybe pool shops and things like that. But I don't see the point in spending a great deal of money on these sorts of things. And then I've got a zip. It's just a birch zip. Can you see that? Birch dress zip. So it's nylon. The only one I had was 25 centimeters, which is 10 inches. So it's not going to fit all the way across our project. So I'm going to see if I can just attach the zip, and once the zip's attached, sew each side, of the zip, of the fabric that's left over. So we should have a zip in the middle of fabric that becomes a pouch. You'll see what I mean. It's a bit hard to explain. But anyway, so we are going to do a copy of Chelsea's zippered pouch with a water resistant line. Now I'm saying water resistant, not waterproof. I know that this packet says waterproof. That's because there are no holes in it. You've got to remember we are sewing it, so there are going to be small holes where we join, the items together. So water resistant. If you've gone to the beach or the pool, as long as you give your costume a good wring out, then at least it should get you home with it, so it doesn't wet everything else in your bag. It also means if you've got makeup or any sort of cosmetics inside the bag, if they get broken or spilled, it should stay mostly contained. but you can rinse it out and hang it on the line and it will dry. It'll be fine. So water resistant. Okay, let's get to it. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken my drying mat and I've just folded it in half and then just cut straight down. So I've got two even pieces. When I look at the fabric, I can see that one side looks a bit darker and one side looks a bit lighter. It's just the way the fabric has, come out once they've attached it. Um, the reason I'm pointing this out is because I want the lighter side to be my outside fabric. So that's going to be my right side of fabric. So if you've got a dish mat that's got a pattern, or it might be floral or lemons or whatever it is, you want that to be the outside so people can see it. So that's your right side of the fabric. The other side that you don't want them to see will be the wrong side, and that will be on the inside that people won't see. If you've just got a plain color and you can't tell the difference, that's fine. It's not going to matter. But if you do have something patterned, then you just be aware of which is your right and wrong side. So the pattern side, the pretty side, is the right side that people will see. I've taken my tablecloth and I've just cut a piece out of it. What I've done is I have left it folded, and so I'm actually getting to like I've got a long piece like that. I need to just cut it down the middle, which I can do right now. So I'm just going to take a ruler. I'm just going to grab this one. It's the closest one to me. And I'm just going to use my rotary cutter straight across. There you go, done. The reason I left it folded was because it is quite thin plastic. So I wanted it just a little bit thicker, so it's less see-through and just gives you a bit more protection. So if you've done the same thing as me, you can have two pieces, but if you've only got one piece, that's fine. If you're using something that's a bit thicker, like a shower curtain or a thicker tablecloth, then you will only need one piece of that. So it's up to you, but because mine was quite thin and flimsy, you can probably see it's quite thin and flimsy, so I've decided just to double that up. Okay, so what we're going to do is now we're going to attach the zipper, and then once we've attached the zipper and the lining, I'm going to show you how to make a boxed corner in the bottom, in the base of the bag. So it's going to sort of sit like a cosmetic bag with a flat bottom. And like I said, I've only got a small zip. So ideally, I would prefer something longer. So as you can see, it's only, it comes to that. So, where your metal parts are is where your zip's going to go to. So the opening of the bag isn't going to be as big as what I wanted. So if you do have access to a longer zip, one that potentially comes all the way, I would use that. But if you've only got a small zip like mine, it's still going to work. It's still going to be fine. But I'll show you how to attach that and close up those top bits so that you don't have holes. Okay, so let's get started. So take your fabric, your dish mat, pretty side up, right side up, okay? So you always start with your right side up. Take your zip, and you've got the top side, the right side, where you can see the layer of the zipper teeth, and then you've got the back where you can't see the zipper teeth. And that's your wrong side. So you want right sides together. So you're going to lay that face down. I'm just eyeballing it. I'm not measuring it. It looks to me like it's fairly even on each side. I'm not that concerned if it's not. Because just remember, you guys are just beginners. So we're not going to stress about things, okay? We're just going to go for it and we're going to see how it turns out. And that's part of learning, because you're going to try it and you're going to see where there's an error, and then you're going to know for next time what you want to change. Or You may not view it as an error. You might think it actually looks how you want it, and that's perfectly fine as well, okay? So this is your project. Anyway, take your layer of tablecloth, and that's your lining, and then you're going to place that on top. So mine's a little bit smaller than what I wanted, but that's okay. So like I said, I'm going to line it up. So it wasn't very good with my measurements, but that's all right. You want to get the top lined up. So you want your dish mat and your zipper to line up to the top, and your lining to line up to the top. As close as you can. It does not have to be perfect. I'm going to use some clips for this. You can use pins. Try not to pin too far down into your lining though, because remember you are putting holes and it's plastic. So we're trying to make this as water resistant as we can. So I'm going to put a clip there, line my next one up. I'm going to use a couple of clips because this plastic is, I did do a trial and I found that it does move about a bit when we sew, and it does stretch a little bit. So I just want to keep it in place as much as possible. So I'm going to use as many clips as I can. And then we'll just take the clips out as we go. Now, move back your lining. We want to make sure that we are sewing that down. Okay, so that will be inside you've got a tag, the tag at the top of your zip. So there's the top of your zip with your little zippy bit. And I want to fold this over like that so that when I sew the tag, I'm moving the top bit of the tag, which is that bit, away, because I don't want it sticking out the top of my project. So for this, I'm just going to pop a pin. And then I'll remove that as I come to it, and I'll hold it in place. It's a bit awkward because I want to try and get the whole pin in. Oh, look, that's as close as it's going to get. So ideally, when we sew our zip, we're going to start from about here, and we're going to go across the top, and that little fold is going to stop the tag from moving about and coming up into our project where you're going to be able to see it. And I'm going to pin that corner down because you won't see that once the project is done either. But that's just going to secure that in place. So I might put a few more clips. I know there's a lot, but I just don't want it moving about too much. But if it does move, don't worry. It'll be fine. Because people aren't going to really see it. No one's going to pick it apart. And if this is for yourself, you're going to love it because you've made it, and you should be proud of yourself. In fact, if you're this far into any of my videos, I'm really proud of you for sticking around. I know I've only got a couple up, but if you've made it this far, then I'm really proud of you for persevering with your sewing journey. Anyway, let's get started with that. Okay, so remember, we're going to be sewing along straight down. So make sure you have your zipper foot attached to your machine. Okay, here we are at the machine. Might grab my pin cushion. All right, so I'm ready with my pin cushion. So remember, when you're sewing, you want to try and take your pins out as you go. Sometimes you might forget, but we're going to try it because it just keeps your needle protected and your machine as well. Okay, so I have my zipper foot in place. If you want to, you can go back to one of my previous tutorials, which is just about, it's simply just attaching a zip. So it's a very short tutorial just where I've attached a zip to a scrap of fabric. So I do recommend having a look at that if you've got time. because that explains things a little bit easier. But anyway, so we can start with this one. Now I'm starting at the very end of where my lining is. I'm going to put my zipper foot down. I have a pin there, so I'm removing my pin, and I'm going to use my hand wheel just to pop my needle in. So we always try and start with our needle in. I've lined up my zipper foot, so the edge of the zipper foot on the inside of the machine is right on the edge of my fabric. And we're going to go quite slow with this because it is plastic, and the needle I'm using is a quilting needle, so it is a little bit thicker because I'm going through the foam. You can use a standard universal needle for this. It's not going to hurt, but if you do have a larger needle, go ahead and pop that in. So okay, so we're going to go forward a few like we normally do. We're going to do a reverse, which keeps it in place, and then we're going to go forward a little bit. Now keeping an eye on our pin, so I'm coming up to where I folded that piece. Now my top of my zipper is right here, so I'm going to pull my lining back and open my zipper, so that just gives me a little bit more wiggle room. Once we've gotten past this bit, we'll close the zipper again. So with your needle in, lift your foot up, pull back your lining, and you can see your zipper. Okay, so grab your zipper tab, which I seem to have pinned into. I've pinned it in. Hold on, let me just, I've wiggled my pin around, so I've managed to. Okay, so we're going to pull that back about that far. It doesn't have to be too big. And don't worry about this. We don't have to worry about that side. Okay, that's all right if that flaps about, because that's out of the way, because we don't want to sew that bit down. That's the other side. Now, foot down, and just watching where my pin is. I'm not going over my pin yet. So it's under the top of the foot, but it's not where I'm sewing. I just wanted to move it forward so I'm securing that tab in place. Now I've taken my pin out. You can use your hand wheel to walk it forward if you're worried about your speed. If you have a speed option on your machine, you can pop it to the lowest one just to give you some more control. Otherwise, sometimes when I'm going over things where I think I might hit a piece I don't want to, always winding your hand wheel on the side of your machine towards yourself. And so I'll do it right now. So what I'm doing is I'm slowly walking it over the top of that tab. You don't have to do this. I'm just showing you how you can slowly go over parts. It gives you more control. So always pull the hand wheel towards yourself. Never go backwards. So I can take my first clip off. So just trying to hold it in place, watching your fingers, going slow. Speed it up slightly. Again. Okay, so next clip comes off. So I'm just watching and holding my lining in place because it's slippery. I always say I'm never going to sew with slippery fabric. And here I am sewing with slippery vinyl plastic stuff. So slowly, I can also feel where the top of my zip is as well. So I'm getting closer to that. So needle in, lever up, pull back your lining. You can see your zip there. So we want to close that now. You might have to maneuver your work just slightly around like that. That's why we keep our needle in. So I've closed my zip, as you can see. Lining back over, holding that
in place, pop your foot down, go forward slightly, and then I can take my next clip out. So I'm going to speed it up a little bit just so that you don't have to sit there and watch me for 10 minutes. But for you guys, I just want you to keep going slow, okay? This is not a race. Holding everything in place, watching your fingers. Keep your fingers out of the way. I know it looks like my fingers are quite close, but they're not. So as you can see, my plastic is moving a little bit as I sew. It is stretching a little bit. Don't worry, just keep on going. We'll go right to the right to about there. So this is about 1 centimetre from the edge, okay? What I might do, so I can see my plastic, yeah, my plastic. Okay, so what I want to do, I want to go back a little bit. So you're doing your back stitch. I'm taking it back a little bit further. I think I actually want to end a little bit further in because the top of that plastic has stretched but the bottom hasn't. So when I sew up here, I want to try and make it even. So I'm going to stop that at about 1.5, which is there. So take my needle up, lever up. Okay, now you can snip off your fabric, your thread there, and you can see we have a lining attached. Don't worry about the little puckers, don't worry about the little folds. Once it's all together, you won't even notice. Now we're going to attach the next side of our zipper to the rest of our fabric.
Hello friends. Look, I'm just jumping into the tutorial now because while I'm sitting here doing my editing, I've realized that I have missed a step in the tutorial, and that's the step you need to do right now. So you have just attached your zip, one side of your zip to one side of your pouch. So what you now need to do before you attach the other side of the zip, you need to do a top stitch. A top stitch is a stitch that runs from one side of one corner of your zip all the way to the very end. So like I said with my one, my zip was a bit short. So I put my zip into the middle of the pouch. So if I was to do this, I would be starting right at the end, or probably about 1 centimetre in from my edge, and I would do a top stitch all the way down on that side before I attached the other side of my zip to the bag. So that's what you actually have to do now. You can fast forward if you already know how to do zips and you know about top stitching. But the reason I'm asking you to do the top stitch is because what will happen is it attaches your lining to the zip so that your lining doesn't come up out of your bag and into the zip. So if you look at my bag here, you can see how my lining rolls around, and it could potentially get stuck in the zip as I open and close it. So the top stitch will avoid that happening. So you can either watch the full tutorial on how to attach a zip, which I'm popping up here somewhere, or you can just follow on in the tutorial as we're going and just watch the part about the top stitch, and you can just go ahead and do that. Once you've done your top stitch, you can then attach the zip to the other side of the bag with those parts. Okay, so go ahead and do that, and then I'll meet you back in the tutorial later.
So I've pressed my work. So as you can see, there's a nice crisp edge running down. So I've manipulated it just ever so gently, pulling away from the zipper, and I've given it a press with my iron. Now I'm going to show you, as I said before, depending on what side of the zip you're sewing on, it depends on which side you need to use with your foot. So as you can see, because I'm now doing a top stitch, I want to change my foot over so that I can sew straight down this line. Now there's two things you can do here. You can either swap the foot to the other side, or you can put your standard foot back on. And if you were to put your standard foot back on, it would run down the side of the teeth and you'd be sewing on the fabric, which is what you want. So you can do it two ways. But I like to use my zipper foot because I'm generally not finished, attaching a zipper. So I don't want to keep swapping feet, which is why I tend to do it just with the zipper foot. So that's what we're going to do today. So I'm going to detach my zipper foot and I'm going to move it over, and then I'm going to attach it. There we go. So now it's onto the other side. So when I put this under, you can see that it's where I want it to be. So originally it was on that side of the foot, and you don't want your stitching down there. It's too far away from your seam. So if I swap it over like I have, it means I get a nice clean top stitch along the seam. So that's what we're going to do now. So again, starting just on the inside of our metal piece, we want to put our needle in, always starting with our needle in, and then we're just going to do our top stitch. So just following that straight line, using your foot as a guide, go straight down that fabric, and we're just holding our fabric, just keep it nice and straight, maintaining that nice line. Now I'm coming up to my zip, so foot up, needle in. I'm just going to open my zip. A little bit awkward because of parts of the machine. There we go. So foot back down before we start sewing, keeping our work nice and straight, holding it in place. We're going to go down just to the metal piece. So we're pretty much in line with the stitch we did along the zipper originally. Going to do a back stitch, and then we're going to go forward. Okay, and then that's pretty much it. So we're going to needle up and then foot up, and we have a nice top stitch. So we'll just move to the table where you can see that a little bit more clearly. So flip it over so your lining is tucked under, okay, and then you've got your right side up with the right side of your zip, and then remembering right sides together. We want the outer of our project lining up your zipper with the top of your project as best you can. Don't stress. And now for this bit, we need to do our linings together. Actually, what I might do is I'm going to flip the whole thing over like that. So you can see top of your project, right side of your zipper together. So this is a bit like how we did it the first side. And then lay your lining on top. So your lining needs to match up with your other parts, okay? So you've got your work, your outer, your zipper, and your lining, all three together there. And I'm just eyeballing it as well, lining it up as evenly as I can. I'm going to pop a clip on there. We're going to do the same thing we did with the tab. Anyway, so let's clip those. So pull back your lining. So that's like we did before. I'm going to fold that back like that. Grab a pin that in. So that's in there. And then we'll go to the other side. Like we should have done originally. Fold that back. And pin that in place. So you can see that. So I've pinned. Now I want to make sure that I have clipped everything in place. I'm going to pin this end here like I did at the start. Just clip those in place. Add some more clips to keep my plastic in place. Making sure everything's lined up as evenly as you can. Oh, I need more. Pin that edge down. Oh, my pin's not good. Oh, there we go. Get in there. Right. There we go. So we're now going to sew along there. All right, so we've attached our zipper to our right sides and our lining. So how we're going to close this, these little holes on each side, fold your right sides together and then have both your linings coming out there. So what we need to do now to close these, you can see where your stitching is. So we want to stitch up to, that's the start of my zip. I'm going to open that so it's not in the way. So I've just opened my zip a little bit there. So we want to stitch up to around where the metal pieces are. So bearing in mind where that is, keeping those together, I'm going to just put a pin in the top of my fabric there, just so that I can see where I want to stop stitching. And where your stitch line is from where you attach your zip, we're going to stitch just on the inside of that. So making sure you've lined it up, you want to see where your linings match up, because you don't want to be able to see the lining sticking up. So you want to match those together, put that down, and I'm going to put a pin, because I'm going to come in about probably 1/2 centimetre in from where the lining, where I've attached my zip, because that means when I sew along where that pin is, I'm going to remove that pin, but this is just a guide. But where I sew where that pin is means that I won't be sewing any of the lining in an odd way that has it stick out of the, project when we're finished. So you'll see what I mean. So I'm going to flip that around now so I can mark the other side too. So lining up our linings, the bottom and the top one there, as evenly as we can. Grab your pin, find your stitch mark from your zipper, and then about that far in. I can see my tab here too. So I want to finish this length roughly around where my tab is sticking out. So I'm just going to pop a pin there as well, so I can mark where I'm sewing to. There we go. So we're going to head back to the machine. I've left my zipper foot on for this because I think that I would rather just use my zipper foot so I get a nice, I can see the edge as I'm sewing. So you'll see what I mean. I'll see you back at the machine. So with my zipper foot, I'm going to need to swap the sides because I want the zipper foot to be on the inside of my project so I can see the line I'm sewing, a bit like how we did with the zip. So you just use your little lever at the back and you can remove your foot, and see how there's a bar down the middle and across. So I was in the first part, I want to be into the other side. So I was on the left, I want to be on the right. So I've attached that back now. So when I put my project under, I can see where my pin is that I'm using as my guide, and the needle is on the inside of the foot, so I can see exactly where I want to sew straight down. So I'm going to start at about 1.5 in. Put your lever down. I'm putting my needle down, and now I'm going to remove the pin that I used as a guide before I start sewing. So just keeping your lining out of the way, we're going to sew to where we've put our second pin here. So forward, and now we're going to do a reverse, and then slowly up to where our pin is. Now I'm going to remove my pin and just bring it forward a few more stitches up to roughly, I'm just going to eyeball it as to where my pin was. Got my finger there so I can sort of line it up as best I can, keeping your finger out of the way. I think that's about it. Going to reverse and then go forward. There we go. So there we have, you can see where we've now attached that, and our zipper is in the inside there. And we're going to do the other side. Now for this one, because we've flipped our work over, I'm going to have to put my zipper foot back, so I'm using the left side of it again, because I want the zipper flat on my work. Okay, so pop that in there. It's about 1.5. Remove my pin. My needle's down. Holding your lining out of the way, and we're going to come up to this pin. So remembering your forward and backward stitches. Okay, coming up to my pin and then eyeballing it to roughly where I want my work to finish. So I'm just using the pattern on my dish mat as a bit of a guide. Okay, there we go. Cut our threads. And there we go. So we can see where our zip is. See where our join is. Okay. So now we've joined those top bits of the bag. Let's go back to the table and I'll show you how to do the rest. I'm going to just snip my loose threads just because it's easier to manage your work when you don't have threads everywhere. Snip them off. Now, what we want to do is pin or clip around. So keeping everything as it was, you want to remember where your zip is. My zip is there. Push your zipper teeth so they're heading towards their lining. So they're going into the lining. And then just pop that flat. Line up your lining as best you can. Doesn't matter if it's not completely even. And then we're going to clip around. Now I'm probably going to use a lot more clips when I get to the lining because like last time it moved around. Where are my clips? Oh, here we go. The clipping, I've got an uneven edge, so I'm just making note of how far in that uneven edge is. I'm going to put that around. And then I'm going to just pin. Oh, reaching for my pin cushion. There we go. So just using my quilting pins because they're longer around the edges. Oh, I just bent my pin. So just make sure your sides are as even as possible. Might have to just give them a wiggle. I bought these pins off Temu. They're not great. They're very bendy. But I like them because they're long. But I wouldn't buy them again. Because they're not that sharp either. It's really just the length. And your pins shouldn't bend. If you've got good quality pins, they shouldn't be bending at all. They should be sharp all the time. Well, unless you've used them a million times, in which case they can lose that sharp point. But these ones are not old, so they shouldn't be hard to use. But anyway, here we go. Now, we want to take note on our lining because we're actually going to be bagging it out. Like in one of my previous tutorials where we did a pouch, we do need to keep a gap. So when we want to sew to here and then sew to here, we're going to be leaving this bit open so that we can bag it out. And that's how we turn it all around the right way. But for now, we're going to go, what we're going to do is I like to start where my lining, where I'm trying to leave a gap. So I'm probably going to start on one of these edges, work my way around, stitching it at about 1.5 centimeters in the whole way round. and then back to where I want my gap to be. I'm taking my zipper foot off. I can just go there, putting my proper foot on. That's now clipped on. Get yourself ready with the equipment you need. I've got my pin cushion for my pins. Remember, we're taking them out as we go. Okay, so we're going to start where I want my gap. And we're stitching at about 1.5 seam allowance. So I might bring that over. Start about there. So just going slow. Do some back stitches as well to get yourself in there. Okay. Now my 1.5, see how my lining doesn't exactly meet up. So my 1.5, I'm going to go back a little bit because I want my 1.5 to be from the part of the lining that's most inner. Otherwise, if I do it from the very edge, I might end up with a hole later. So keeping your needle down, lift your foot. You just want to turn your work. Foot down. And then you can continue. Oh, a thread in the way. There we go. Now we're coming up to where we joined our bag and everything together. So I'm just checking where my zipper is because I don't want to go over any metal pieces. Now I can see that the end of my zipper is there. I'm perfectly fine. I don't have any metal pieces in the way. So always check when you're sewing because you don't want to end up hitting something that you're not supposed to. So just slowly and gently. And there we are onto the bag. Pin out. I'm glad I have my quilting needle in because I can hear the way it's going through the foam, that it's quite thick. So my quilting needle, like I said, is a thicker needle. So I'm really glad that I've got that. So up to about 1.5, that'll do me. So needle in, foot up, turn your work. Pins out as we go. If you have a walking foot, which is a big thick foot, where is it? I've got one. This is a walking foot, what you use for quilting. And it has feed dogs on here. So the feed dogs are those metal things inside your machine that help pull your fabric through. So your walking foot's actually got feed dogs on it too. So then you have the top and the bottom taking the fabric through. So it just takes a bit of pressure off your machine. If you've got one of these, you can put it on and use it, but you don't have to. I didn't bother because I'd already just taken it off because I finished doing some quilting. So I couldn't be bothered putting it back on. So there we are, we're turning our work again. Like I said, I'm coming up to where I joined everything before with the zip. So I'm just going to take note. I don't have any metal in there where I'm going to go over, so that's fine. Always stop and check. I'm just going to go gently over. Here we are onto our lining. Checking where our lining meets up. Making sure that we have a seam allowance for that. We don't want any holes. Okay, so down to the end at about 1.5 and stopping there. We're turning our work. We're almost at the end here. So remember, we want to leave a gap so we can turn it the right way. I'm going to take it about there. No, a bit further. About there. Okay. Do your back stitch and forward. Oh, got a little bit of pull in my plastic. That's okay. I'm pulling that out. And it looks like I've literally just run out of my bobbin thread. I've just run out of my bobbin thread as I finished stitching that. So that's good luck, isn't it? So I'm going to have to wind my bobbin thread back on and I will meet you.
Okay, so my microphone has died in this section and I didn't even notice. So what we're doing here is we're just going to trim off our excess seam. So you can see how it's a little bit bulky around our foam side of the bag. So go ahead and just trim those down to half or even take off 3/4, and that will take a bit of the bulk out of the bag. This is where we're going to create our boxed corners. So you want to just pop your finger into the corner and then press it down so you've created a bit of a triangle there. And we're going to sew in a straight line straight across. We're going to pop a pin in so you can use that as a guide. And we're going to measure roughly 2 inches across. And that's going to be a 2-inch seam across for us. So our box corners will be a 2-inch boxed corner. So I've just popped a pin in there to keep it in place. And you want to do this on all 4 corners. So as you can see, I'm about to do the other corner as well. So just flattening it out. You might need to manipulate your work a little bit to flatten it. 2 inches. Don't stress if it's not exact. But if I like a 2-inch corner, I just think for something like a makeup bag, it's just a nice size. It's not too bulky down the bottom. Remember, you need to do that on your lining as well. So all 4 corners here. Don't worry about that bulky bit of seam if you've got an extra bulky bit of seam on your lining, because it's so soft. It's not going to bulk up inside the bag and it's not going to make a problem. So just make sure that you've flattened out that corner, and again, do a 2-inch. You want them all to be the same size. I'm clipping mine because I don't want to put holes in my lining unnecessarily.
So my microphone stopped working halfway through all that on my videos. So you're probably watching in silence. But anyway, what I did, which you can see, is I made the corners and I sewed just across each of the corners. And now I just want to trim it. So I don't want to use my good scissors on the plastic. So I'm just going to use craft scissors for the plastic and just trim the triangle off about a centimetre-ish. And then I can even just use my craft scissors on this foam as well. So do about the same there. So never use your fabric scissors on anything that's not fabric, like your lining or paper, because it does dull the blade. And even though this is fabric, the foam is not, so I'm just using my craft scissors for that. If you used your fabric scissors once, it's not going to kill them, but if you were to continually do it, then it would become an issue. Anyway, you can see where I have stitched across all of those corners and made a boxy kind of base. So what we now need to do is turn it the right way. So we're going to put your hand in and grabbing your work, and you want to pull it through. Just be careful with your lining because, you know, it is stretchy if you're using thin one like me. So we're just going to be careful. And we're just going to maneuver that over. You can squeeze the foam. There you go. So I've squeezed my foam so that I can get it out of the lining without ruining it. I'm going to turn our lining the right way. Pop your hand into the bag. Poke your little corners out, including your top corners as well, where your zipper was. So put your finger into that corner and just poke it out. You have almost finished bag. And now for this bit, we need to join this hole together. So I've just got my corners turned out as much as possible. If you pull it taut, it closes by itself, and you can see where we want to do a stitch. Okay, so I'm just going to clip it along there. So we're going to go to the machine and we're just going to do a top stitch along the edge. So it's an edge stitch. So it doesn't have to be 1.5 in. It needs to be as close to the edge as possible without going off the edge or without missing the other side of our work and leaving a hole. Okay, so let's go and do that. So leaving our normal foot on, finding where your join starts, we want to just line it up. So I'm doing probably a couple of millimeters off the edge, because I don't want a great big bulky bit inside my bag, but I can see where it's joined. It joins up nicely. Let's move my clip over a little bit. So we're going to start with our back stitch. So going slowly, taking your clips off as you go, holding your work straight. And just making sure your work is flat and you're not accidentally going to be joining any of the other lining in, like folding in unnecessarily. So keeping that flat, keep the rest of the lining out of the way. I'm going to go right up to where that, okay, so that was where my join was. Okay. And so, as you can see, we have done an edge stitch all the way across there, and we've joined that, our gap. Now we can turn our bag the right way. I'm just going to cut off my little threads so it gives it a nicer finish. And let's turn our bag the right way.
So here we have our bag. So we're going to turn it the right way. So just tuck your lining in. And as you can see, we have our box corners there. And the box corners on the inside have helped the lining sit nicely. This is now a bag that's good enough to use for cosmetics. It's nice and soft, so it'll stop anything breaking as you move it around in your luggage. But also, if you want to put your swimsuit inside there when you're on your way back from the beach or the pool, it will keep everything else in your bag relatively dry, because like we said, it's water resistant. So as long as you just wring your suit out and then pop it in, and it will get you home without wetting everything else in your bag. So if you've got changes of clothes or whatever in there, it's not going to get all soaking wet from your suit. And it's just a little bit nicer than having plastic bags and things like that hanging around. And then once you get home and take it out, you can just dry it out. Just pop it outside, it'll dry. There we go, zip across. There we go. That's not bad. I quite like that for, you know, a beginner bag. Just tuck my little corner out a little bit. There we go. You have now got a nice soft cosmetic bag, beach bag, whatever bag you want to use it for, and you've now learned how to do boxed corners. So you've added something else to your list of things you're learning. Well, I'm very proud of you. If you've managed to get all the way to the end and you've done this, I'm very proud of you. So anybody who does make one of these dish mat pouches, pop it in the comments below and show me what you've done. And I'm also going to put a link to Chelsea's video as well from when she does one of these bags. I do recommend watching her do that. So yes, I cannot take the credit for this. This is one of her creations. This is the dish mat pouch that Chelsea from She Sew Seams makes, and so this is my version, which is very similar. But go on to the YouTube and watch Chelsea as well, and like and subscribe to my channel. Like and subscribe to Chelsea as well. I think she deserves it. So there we go. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you next time for the next thing. I have to think about what we're going to do. Maybe a tote bag. I don't know. We'll see you soon.